All right, this is our last chapter, chapter 24. The 6th grade of Ben Withers Middle School came out of the corn maze together, and Brian, Ollie, and Coco were holding hands as they did. They were even laughing. Who cared if they were dirty? They were alive. The sky was a thin, living blue. The air smelled like ordinary fall, crisp leaves and smoke. There were no scarecrows. The mud and cold and fear of the past days was like a bad dream. At the edge of the cornfield, the hound stopped. Ollie turned to look at him. "Call me by my name," he whispered in her ear, "if you need." And then he bounded joyfully back into the shadows between the corn, the shadows that, Ollie suspected, always clung to the edge of the world. Then the kids stepped out of the corn maze and stopped. "We're back where we started," said Brian. They were. They had popped out of the cornfield right next to the bus. The bus looked just as it had on the day they rode to Misty Valley Farm, except now it stood abandoned in the middle of the road. A very serious crowd stood around the bus, a tow truck, 3 police cars. Regular cars were lined up on both sides of the road with crowds of people dressed in tramp through the woods. A search party, parents, all their parents. Some of them had obviously been crying. Miss Webster was there, weeping hysterically. Her voice came to Ollie's ears as she stepped out of the corn. "The scarecrows," she was saying. "The scarecrows." And he smiled at me. "I couldn't say no. Do you hear me? I couldn't say no." "I said no," said Ollie, "and I bet I wanted my mom more than you wanted your old farm, even if you were going to jail." Heads turned as 30 kids broke at once from a gap in the corn. Some people screamed with happiness and shock, but Ollie only had eyes for one of them. "Dad!" Ollie hollered. "Dad!" Her father whipped around. "Ollie, Ollie!" There was no color in his face, not even a bit, and there were marks like blue thumbprints under his eyes. Her father sent Officer Perkins sprawling when he sprinted toward her. Parents on all sides were running toward their kids, shouting questions, exclaiming, crying. Ollie found that she was running too, half blinded by tears. All around her, the 6th grade surged forward. "Mom!" cried Coco, and out of the corner of her eye, Ollie saw Coco swept into a hug by a tall woman with thick ash-colored hair. Then Ollie and her dad collided, and he managed to stop just in time so he didn't run her over. He caught her to him tightly, and Ollie could feel him shake. "Ollie," he whispered, "Ollie, sweetheart, I was so worried. What happened?" "I love you, Dad," Ollie said. "I love you." She buried her face in his familiar flannel shoulder. But right before she did, her watch chimed softly. Ollie glanced down. "Love," it said. "Love you too, Mom," Ollie whispered. A month later. 1 month later, Miss Webster didn't go to jail. She was supposed to. She went to court and everything, but the night before her sentencing, she disappeared. Ollie, when she heard, wondered if Miss Webster had made a new bargain with the smiling man, and if so, what it was. After they left the corn, no one seemed to be able to properly remember what had happened during the night and day. No one except Coco, Brian, and Ollie. There were stories about government cover-ups, about experimental drugs, about aliens. Ollie and Brian and Coco looked at each other and they shrugged. Was it any less weird than the truth? Sometimes they talked about it, wondered if the smiling man was still out there, making a new corn maze, making new scarecrows, but mostly they got on with things. They had a lot of living to do. Night fell in early December, and Evansburg smelled like snow. Its ponds skimmed over with ice. More ice gathered in the shady places along the banks of Leith Creek. But inside Ben Withers Middle School, one classroom was full of light and noise. 2 girls sat opposite each other, a chessboard between them, and a whole horde of their classmates stood around laughing and egging them on. "Come on, Ollie. You really gonna lose to this city girl?" "Get it, Coco, get it. Are you letting this know-it-all beat you?" Neither girl even looked up. They'd been playing for half an hour. The last match of chess club practice, but it had turned into a battle, with pieces racing up the board, daring raids, hard-fought exchanges, and clever pincer moves. Both girls tried but neither could gain a decisive advantage. Now it was the end game. Ollie was down to a queen, a bishop, and 4 pawns. Coco had 3 pawns, her queen, and a rook. Coco's king was retreating across the board as Ollie jostled him with her bishop. "Queen's game, Coco," said Mr. Easton. "Watch her pawn." Oh! Coco had moved her rook. "Checkmate," she said, her eyes glinting. No one had seen it coming. Everyone froze, even Ollie did, staring wide-eyed at the board as Coco's haphazard arrangement of pawns resolved themselves into a clever trap. Then Ollie whooped, turned her king over, got up and bowed. "Middle school champion," she said to Coco, and the whole room burst into applause. Coco flushed with pleasure. "Rematch tomorrow, though," added Ollie, and grabbed a handful of popcorn that Mr. Easton had brought for the chess club to eat on the way home. The girls pulled on caps and coats and heavy boots to a chorus of good nights and set out into the bitter December wind, while Mr. Easton, whistling to himself, locked the school behind them. Brian caught up to them at the gate. He'd been playing pond hockey. He was grinning like a maniac. "You guys missed out," he said. "On hockey?" "Yes," said Coco cheerfully, "because I love games where I can easily be mistaken for a puck." Brian snorted. "I'll make you a sign to wear. I'm not the puck." "Yeah, but hockey players can't read," said Coco, and they all grinned at each other. "They can sometimes read," said Ollie. "You guys want to come to my house? Dad said he was making his famous cornbread mole squash pie with extra cornbread." "Only if there's apple pie for dessert," said Brian. "I can make one," said Ollie. "Dad showed me how." "Well, then let's go," said Coco. "Being middle school chess champion makes me hungry." "Just wait for that rematch," said Ollie. And so, arm in arm, the 3 of them walked through the Christmas lights home to the Egg, where Ollie's dad was waiting for them. "Supper's ready," he said, and smiled. All right, that is the end of Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. OBOB book for next year, so you are 1 down if you're planning on doing OBOB. All right, we'll be choosing a new read aloud that I'll be posting on Google Classroom for you, and I will see y'all soon. Bye!